What do we really see when a country becomes a symbol of wealth? Is it only the glass towers, the golden lights, the luxury cars moving through wide streets, and the impossible cities rising from the sand? Or is there another life behind the brightness, quieter, older, and far more human than the image the world usually remembers? What remains when the lights begin to fade, when the skyline turns into shadow, and when the desert outside the city begins to feel present again? The United Arab Emirates appears to the world like a desert mirage made real. Its cities glow at night with a confidence that feels almost unreal, with towers of glass catching the last traces of sunlight. Highways carrying streams of motion, islands shaped by ambition, and skylines that seem to have risen out of silence with no warning. For many people, this is the first image of the United Arab Emirates. Dubai shining beneath the stars, Abu Dhabi stretching along the water, luxury malls bright as palaces, hotels standing like monuments to modern design, and streets polished into symbols of speed, wealth, and success. It is a country that knows how to astonish the world, building upward, reflecting light, turning scale into emotion and ambition into architecture. From a distance, the United Arab Emirates can feel almost impossible, as if the desert itself had opened and allowed a new world to rise from within it. But the richest story of the United Arab Emirates does not live only in the places that shine the brightest. Behind the glass, there are desert roads where the horizon seems endless. Old markets where spice, fabric, gold, and memory still move through narrow alleys, and coastal waters carrying the quiet echoes of boats' trade and generations who understood the sea long before the skyline arrived. There are workers stepping into the morning before the city fully wakes. Commuters moving through stations, shopkeepers lifting metal shutters, delivery drivers crossing wide avenues, and families beginning the day in neighborhoods far from the postcard view. There is the rhythm of prayer, the warmth of tea shops, the patience of sand, and the silence that still waits just beyond the city lights. This is the secret life behind the world's richest desert nation, not hidden because no one can see it, but hidden because it is so easy to look past it. It is easy to see only wealth here, to imagine the United Arab Emirates as a place made entirely of luxury, speed, and spectacle, where everything is new, polished, and almost too perfect to feel real. Yet, beneath that image is a nation shaped by older forces, desert and sea, faith and family work, and migration, memory, and reinvention. The modern United Arab Emirates may be known for its shine, but its deeper rhythm is quieter. It lives in the spaces between the towers in the evening air, above the sand in the footsteps of people who make the city move, and in the old coastal memories still carried beside the water. The desert has not disappeared here. It has simply become quieter, waiting outside the cities beneath the morning heat and the evening gold moving in the wind across the dunes, living in the distance between roads and horizons, and reminding us that even the most modern dream still stands on sand. And this is where our journey begins, not with the United Arab Emirates as a symbol of wealth, not with the image of a country reduced to towers, supercars, and impossible luxury, but with the United Arab Emirates as a living desert nation, where ambition rises high into the sky, while the deeper soul of the land still belongs to sand, silence, memory, and the people who move through it every day. To understand this place, we have to move slowly beyond the surface, beyond the lights, beyond the luxury, beyond the version of the United Arab Emirates the world already knows, and begin listening for the quieter life still breathing behind the mirage. Before we can understand the quieter life hidden behind the image of the United Arab Emirates, we first have to stand before the image itself, the one that reaches the world in glass, height, light speed, and scale. The city does not whisper. It announces itself through scale reflection and movement, becoming one of the strongest modern images of wealth in the world, not only because of what it has built, but because of how boldly it has chosen to be seen. In Dubai, architecture becomes a language of confidence, where height suggests possibility, weight suggests arrival, and speed suggests a nation refusing to remain still. A tower, a fountain, a hotel lobby, a highway at night, one becomes part of a larger visual story. The United Arab Emirates tells the world a story of transformation in a place where the desert once seemed to promise only distance, heat, and silence. Here, modernity is not hidden in planning or private ambition. It is made visible from the sky, reflected in glass, carried by traffic, and felt in the sheer vertical drama of the skyline. And this visible United Arab Emirates is not only about Dubai. Along the water in Abu Dhabi, another mood of modern ambition begins to appear, calmer in rhythm, yet still powerful in presence. The city stretches beside the coastline with a sense of order, space, and composure, where towers rise near the sea, and the waterfront reflects a quieter version of the same national desire to build, refine, and be recognized. To an outside viewer, these cities can feel almost unreal. Luxury malls open like indoor worlds, cooled and shining beneath glass ceilings, while escalators carry people through bright atriums. Fountains move in carefully timed bursts of water, and light hotels glow above the streets like private kingdoms, and traffic flows across broad highways until the night itself seems alive with motion. It is easy to understand why this image captivates the world, because the United Arab Emirates has made ambition visible in a way few places ever do. It has turned scale into emotion and design into identity, creating cities that can be photographed from the sky, filmed from a moving car reflected in water, and recognized instantly by people who may have never walked their streets. But this image is not simple, and it should not be dismissed as only spectacle. The towers, malls, hotels, and highways are not merely displays of wealth. They are also signs of a country that wanted to be noticed, a nation that chose to build upward and outward until the world could no longer look away. There is something deeply cinematic in that choice, because the city rises not against an ordinary background, but against the memory of open desert. That contrast is what gives the modern image of the United Arab Emirates its force. It is not just luxury placed anywhere. It is luxury built against emptiness. Glass rising from heat-polished stone, reflecting sunlight and city lights glowing beside a silence that still waits beyond the last road. Every skyline feels more dramatic because somewhere outside the frame the desert remains wide, patient, and unbroken. Perhaps that is why the country's visible wealth feels so powerful. It carries the human desire to create permanence in a landscape that has always reminded people how quickly things can shift. It turns ambition into shelter, brightness, movement, and height, transforming the idea of a desert nation into something the world can see from miles away. Still, when a place becomes famous for spectacle, the spectacle can begin to cover everything else. The world sees the height before it sees the hands that keep the city moving, the lights before it feels the darkness beyond them, the polished floors before it hears the footsteps crossing them at dawn, and the dream before it understands the daily life required to keep that dream awake. So the first image of the United Arab Emirates is true but incomplete. The towers are real, the wealth is visible, the luxury is part of the story, and the cities really do shine with extraordinary force. Their beauty comes from precision scale and the courage to imagine differently, but no country can be understood only by what it shows most brightly. Behind every illuminated skyline, there is a quieter geography. Behind every polished surface, there is work routine, memory, and faith. Behind the malls and hotels, there are older roads, prayer times, markets, neighborhoods, coastlines, and desert winds that move through the country with no interest in how modern the city has become. We begin with the country. The world sees first because the surface matters. It is the doorway into the story, the reason so many people look toward the United Arab Emirates with fascination, and the image that has made this desert nation one of the most recognizable symbols of modern ambition. But as the city lights stretch across the night and the last reflections fade from the towers, another presence begins to return, wider, older, and more silent than anything made of glass. Beyond the skyline, the desert is still there, and beneath the towers, it still speaks. When the skyline begins to fade behind us, the country changes its voice, and the United Arab Emirates no longer feels like a world made only of glass reflection and speed, but a land shaped by sand, wind, heat, distance, and a silence that has been here much longer than the cities. The towers grow smaller in the mirror of the road. The bright edges of Dubai and Abu Dhabi begin to soften behind the haze. The streets become wider, then quieter, until the city gives way to open land and the horizon starts to stretch without interruption. Out here beyond the polished city edges, the desert does not feel empty. It feels patient, as if it has been waiting for us to stop looking upward and begin looking outward. This is the older foundation beneath the modern United Arab Emirates, the landscape that shaped the country long before it became known to the world through towers, hotels, highways, and luxury. The desert taught people how to move with care, how to wait, how to read distance, how to value water, shelter, direction, shade, and endurance. And even now, after cities have risen with astonishing speed, that desert memory still lingers beneath the country's modern surface. It lives in the feeling of a horizon that seems to have no end, in the roads that leave the city and disappear toward the dunes, in the softening heat of late afternoon, and in the way the land seems to return to itself when the sun begins to lower. To stand here is to feel a different kind of wealth, not the wealth of marble glass, light, and gold, but the wealth of space, stillness, patience, and a silence large enough to make the modern world feel small for a moment. The desert does not need to announce itself in the way the city does. It does not rise higher, shine brighter, or move faster. Its power comes from remaining vast and quiet, from holding its shape and changing its shape at the same time, from reminding anyone who crosses it that beauty does not always come from spectacle. The dunes do not compete with the towers. They simply outlast them, carrying a kind of patience that makes even the brightest skyline feel temporary against the age of the land. And this is what makes the United Arab Emirates so fascinating. Its modern cities may appear to have broken away from the desert, but emotionally, the country is still tied to it. The skyline can glow through the night, highways can move without pause, and malls can shine like indoor cities, yet, beyond the last neighborhoods, the sand continues to wait with a calm that feels older than ambition itself. As the light changes, the desert becomes cinematic in a way that needs very little movement. A camel crossing the distance becomes a slow silhouette against the sun. A road cutting through the dunes becomes a narrow dark line between two worlds. A camp at dusk glows softly beneath the open sky, and the first lights of evening feel fragile against the enormous darkness gathering around them. There is no need for spectacle here, because the desert has its own quiet drama, written in wind-shadow texture and disappearance. The wind moves across the surface of the sand and leaves patterns that may vanish before nightfall. Footprints appear and fade. The shape of a dune changes without anyone noticing. The land is always moving, but never in a hurry, and that rhythm feels almost opposite to the rhythm of the cities, even though both belong to the same nation. In Dubai and Abu Dhabi, the United Arab Emirates shows what can be built when ambition moves quickly. In the desert, it shows what remains when everything slows down. One side reaches upward through towers, lights, and mirrored walls, while the other stretches outward through heat, shadow, and open space. One side is measured in height and speed, while the other is felt through distance and silence. Yet these are not separate stories, because the modern country and the desert beneath it are tied together more deeply than the surface first allows us to see. The modern United Arab Emirates did not rise in spite of the desert. It rose from a people who understood what it meant to live with it, cross it, respect it, and dream beyond its limits. The desert is not a blank space behind the country's success, and it is not only scenery outside the cities. It is part of the reason the success feels so dramatic, because every tower means something different. When it stands near sand, every road feels more powerful when it crosses emptiness, and every city light becomes more intense when the darkness around it is so wide. This is why the desert still speaks beneath the towers. It reminds the country of where its deeper rhythm began. It gives the United Arab Emirates a memory older than the image the world sees today, softening the shine with silence and placing the modern dream inside a landscape that cannot be fully controlled. As evening settles over the dunes, the desert becomes less like a backdrop and more like a presence. The heat leaves slowly. The sky turns from gold to violet. The sand holds the last light before letting it go, and somewhere far away the city begins to glow again, bright and confident against the night. But from here, the towers feel different no longer. Like the whole story, but like one chapter in a much longer conversation between ambition and silence, between the future and the land beneath it. Between the world the United Arab Emirates has built and the desert that still remembers what came before. And as the night deepens over the sand, the secret life of this nation begins to feel less like something hidden in one place, and more like something carried through contrast itself, in the way a country can move faster than almost anywhere on earth, while still holding the stillness of the desert. As the desert silence begins to fade and the city returns in the distance, the United Arab Emirates reveals another layer of its hidden life, one that does not always appear in images of luxury hotels, glowing skylines, or polished towers, but begins each morning in the quiet footsteps of people who wake early and keep the nation moving before the world sees it shine. Long before the brightest streets fill with visitors, before the malls open their doors, and before the towers reflect the full heat of the day, another rhythm moves through the Emirates. Workers gather near construction sites, commuters walk toward metro stations, taxis roll through wide avenues, shopkeepers lift shutters in old markets. Delivery drivers cross neighborhoods with practiced speed, and small restaurants begin preparing the first meals of the morning. This is where the United Arab Emirates becomes more than an image. It becomes a place of early alarms, crowded rides, uniforms, teacups, phone calls, kitchen, steam, prayer mats, and quiet conversations between people from many different parts of the world. Behind the polished glass and marble is a country powered by ordinary routines, many of them almost invisible to those who only pass through as spectators. Morning in the United Arab Emirates can feel like a meeting of worlds. In one direction, towers catch the rising sun and turn gold for a few minutes, while in another buses carry workers toward the unfinished edges of the city. In one neighborhood, families begin the day behind apartment windows, while in another, vendors arrange spices, textiles, fruit perfume, or gold beneath warm market lights. Because the United Arab Emirates has been shaped by many nationalities living side by side, its everyday rhythm carries many accents, languages, foods, and habits. The streets are lived in by people who have come to work, build, serve, trade, raise families, send money home, begin again, or search for a future in a country that has become one of the great crossroads of modern ambition. This gives the country a hidden emotional texture. In a single morning, the city can hold the smell of strong tea from a small cafeteria, the sound of footsteps moving through a station, quiet focus of a cleaner preparing a lobby before guests arrive, the call of a vendor in a market alley, and the movement of office workers passing beneath towers that seem almost too tall to belong to ordinary life. Faith also gives the day its shape. The rhythm of prayer moves through the United Arab Emirates not as a spectacle, but as a quiet structure beneath daily life. At sunset, mosque, walls warm in the fading light, streets soften for a moment, and the atmosphere seems to gather the city back into something older than traffic, commerce, or speed. This is one of the most important contrasts in the country. The United Arab Emirates can feel intensely modern, yet the presence of faith keeps part of its daily life connected to continuity, discipline, and stillness. A mosque beside a highway, a prayer room inside a mall, a quiet moment between work shifts, or a family walking after evening prayer can reveal more about the country than any skyline alone. The markets carry another kind of memory. In the old souks, the United Arab Emirates slows down again, not with the vast silence of the desert, but with the human closeness of narrow alleys, warm light hanging fabrics, metal shutters, wooden counters, and the layered scent of spices, perfume, leather, and tea. These places remind us that trade, conversation, and exchange are not new here. They have simply taken different forms as the country has changed. Walking through these markets, the polished image of the United Arab Emirates begins to loosen. The country becomes more tactile, heard in bargaining voices felt in the shade between buildings, seen in hands arranging goods with care, and understood in the way older commercial rhythms continue beside the modern economy. Food reveals the hidden life of the nation as well. Away from grand hotels and luxury restaurants, smaller places hold the daily intimacy of the United Arab Emirates cafeterias, serving tea before sunrise. Neighborhood restaurants filled with families, late-night meals after long shifts, and simple tables where people from different backgrounds sit near each other for a few quiet minutes. The neighborhoods away from tourist areas carry this same truth. Laundry moves in the warm air. Children pass through apartment entrances. Delivery bikes wait below residential towers. Small groceries glow at night, and families walk along sidewalks after the heat has softened. Life here is not designed to impress the world, yet it may be one of the most honest parts of the country because it shows the United Arab Emirates not as an idea, but as a home, a workplace, a routine, and a collection of private lives unfolding beneath the public image. Once we begin to see this human layer, the towers no longer feel like objects standing alone in the desert sky. They become places people enter. Clean guard, manage, build, photograph, repair, and leave at the end of long days. The highways no longer feel like lines of speed. They become routes of work and return. The city lights no longer feel like pure spectacle. They become signs of a nation kept awake by thousands of unseen movements. This is the secret life behind the shine, hidden not in darkness, but in plain sight, because the world is often too dazzled by the surface to notice the people beneath it. It is found in early morning streets, in the pause for prayer in small restaurants, metro stations, old markets, and neighborhoods where the modern dream becomes part of ordinary human life. And as the day moves toward evening, another memory begins to rise from the edges of the city, carried by water, wooden boats, market alleys, and the older sound of trade along the shore. Because before the towers became the country's most famous image, the sea had already shaped the life of these coasts, and along its quiet waters, the United Arab Emirates still remembers a different beginning. Before the United Arab Emirates became known through towers, skylines, and luxury, another rhythm shaped life along its shores, the rhythm of water trade. Wooden boats, market alleys, and people moving between coast and city with goods, stories, and memory. To see this older layer, we have to return to the water, to places where the country feels less like an image of the future and more like a nation remembering how it moved before the world knew it through glass and height. Along Dubai Creek, traditional boats cross slowly between the banks, carrying people through a scene where the modern skyline may still appear in the distance, but the feeling is warmer, lower, and closer to the human hand. Here, the story of the United Arab Emirates is not told through height. It is told through passage. Boats arrive and leave. Footsteps move along the edge of the water. Shopkeepers wait beneath shaded entrances, and the city seems to breathe at an older pace, shaped by crossing trading, waiting, and returning. The sea carries a different memory from the desert. The desert teaches distance, patience, and silence, while the coast teaches movement, exchange, and connection. Together, they form two quiet foundations beneath the modern Emirates, one made of sand and horizon, the other of tide, harbor, and shore. There is a human scale here that stands apart from the sharp lines of the skyline. The streets are narrower. The shade matters more, voices echo against close walls. A shopkeeper arranges textiles with quiet care, and someone waits beside the creek as a boat approaches. For a moment, the United Arab Emirates feels less like a symbol of wealth and more like a place built through daily contact, trade, and memory. Wooden dhows and traditional boats carry this feeling especially well. Near the harbor or along the water, they seem to hold another chapter of the Emirates, when the coast was not a backdrop for a modern skyline, but a working edge of life. And when modern towers rise behind these older scenes, the contrast does not erase the past. It deepens it. The glass shows what the United Arab Emirates has become, while the boats, markets, and harbor air remind us that transformation did not begin from nothing. It rose over older patterns of movement, labor exchange, and survival. This is why the water matters. Behind the world's richest desert nation is not only desert silence, but coastal memory. Behind the polished malls are market alleys. Behind the modern waterfront are boats that still move with the quiet grace of crossing from one shore to another. As evening falls over the creek, the city becomes layered. A boat moves across the water, a market glows behind an old doorway, and the air carries spice, salt, heat, and conversation. Somewhere beyond the older streets, the skyline rises again, bright and confident, but now it feels less separate from the past. It feels built over it. The story of the United Arab Emirates is not a clean break between old and new. It is more like a shoreline where each wave touches what came before and leaves something behind. The old souks, wooden boats, harbors, and coastal streets remind us that wealth did not erase the country's earlier textures. It added another layer, brighter, taller, and more visible, but not strong enough to remove the memory beneath. And as we leave the markets and follow the water back toward the modern city, the United Arab Emirates begins to appear not as a contradiction, but as a nation made of layers, desert and sea, silence, and trade ambition, and memory, glass towers, and wooden boats moving through the same evening air. By now, the United Arab Emirates no longer feels like a single image. It feels like a country held between worlds, where luxury and silence, speed and stillness, glass and sand old markets, and future cities all exist within the same national breath. This is not a contradiction. It is the deeper rhythm of the country. In Dubai, the city rises with restless energy, turning ambition into towers, highways, hotels, bright interiors, and movement that seems to continue long after midnight. In Abu Dhabi, the mood often feels more spacious and composed, with waterfront roads, cultural landmarks, modern architecture, and quiet grandeur unfolding at a slower pace. Each city carries its own personality, yet both belong to the same story of reinvention. The United Arab Emirates lives in this tension between what is ancient and what is new. A family walks along a waterfront promenade as the evening heat begins to soften. A mosque glows in the last light of the day, its reflective pools holding the sky for a few still moments. A modern cultural space opens beneath clean architectural lines, suggesting that the country is not only building higher, but also shaping how it gathers, remembers, and presents itself to the world. And then, not far away, the desert returns. This is where the United Arab Emirates becomes most revealing. Its secret life is not hidden in one neighborhood, one market, one mosque, or one desert camp. It exists in the movement between them, in the way a person can pass from a marble lobby to a dusty roadside, from a luxury mall to a small cafeteria, from a glass tower to a mosque courtyard, from a modern waterfront to a desert horizon in the same day. The country asks us to hold more than one truth at once. The wealth is real, but it is not the whole story. The luxury is real, but so is the labor behind it. The skyline is real, but so is the silence beyond it. The modern dream is real, but it stands on older memories of desert sea, trade, faith, and survival. When we see only the surface, the United Arab Emirates can look like a place designed to impress. But when we see the layers together, it becomes something more human. A nation still moving between speed and memory, between global attention and private rhythm, between the desire to astonish the world and the quieter need to remain connected to the land beneath the dream. At night, this contrast becomes even more powerful. The cities glow with almost impossible brightness, their towers reflecting thousands of lights into the dark. While outside the city, the desert remains unlit and vast, holding a silence that makes the skyline feel both magnificent and fragile. This is the United Arab Emirates, between luxury and silence, not one world replacing another, but many worlds living side by side. It is a country where ambition rises into the sky, while memory stays close to the ground, where the future is visible in glass and steel. But the deeper soul still moves through sand, water, prayer work, and evening light. And as night settles over both city and desert, the richest part of the United Arab Emirates begins to feel less like what it owns and more like what it still. After the lights, after the towers, after the polished surfaces, and the long roads glowing through the night, the United Arab Emirates leaves us with something quieter than the image that first brought us here. It leaves us with the desert not as an empty space outside the cities, and not as a background for luxury, but as the older presence beneath the nation's modern dream. The sand still holds the last warmth of the day, wind still moves across the dunes, and the land still reminds us that even the brightest achievements are part of something larger, older, and more patient. This is where the title begins to change its meaning. The United Arab Emirates may be known as one of the world's richest desert nations, but its deepest story is not only about what it owns, builds, or displays. It is about what it still remembers. It remembers the silence beyond the skyline, the sea before the towers, the markets, the boats, the families, the workers, the prayers, the early mornings, and the long patience of a land that taught people how to live with heat, distance, uncertainty, and possibility. To see the United Arab Emirates only through wealth is to miss the life moving behind it. The real country is not found in one symbol, but in the space between symbols, between a glass tower and a desert road, between a luxury mall and a small tea shop, between a modern waterfront and an old market alley, between the speed of reinvention and the stillness that refuses to disappear. And perhaps that is the secret life behind the dream. As night deepens, the skyline glows again in the distance, beautiful and almost unreal. Yet now, after moving through the desert, the markets, the waterfronts, and the daily lives behind the shine that skyline feels different. It no longer appears as the whole story. It becomes one layer of a larger nation, a nation of ambition, but also of endurance. A nation of spectacle, but also of quiet human rhythm. The richest part of the United Arab Emirates may not be its towers, its malls, or its famous lights. It may be the contrast it carries so completely, the ability to look toward tomorrow while still being followed by the silence of the desert, the memory of the sea, and the footsteps of people who make the country live beyond its image. And as the final light fades over the dunes, the United Arab Emirates remains both dream and desert, both modern and ancient, both dazzling and deeply human, a nation the world often sees from the outside, but one that can only be understood when we look behind the mirage.